a historic lawsuit against Apple could reshape the smartphone landscape. AI PCs are here, but you probably can't get one yet. An attempt at bringing a Nintendo Switch emulator back from the dead falls over. Satellite messaging is on the way to Android. The Sims head to the big screen. And more info with the big PlayStation 5 Pro rumors. This and a whole lot more taking over the headlines of the past 7 days. I'm Jason Grewa, and this is The Fresh Wire. Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to episode of The Fresh Wire. I'm Jason Grewa, as I've said earlier, recording this on 11:07 p.m., March 23rd, 2024. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, evening, day, or night, however you are, however you live. So I know I said last week I was going to do episodes back on Fridays, but I realized that it would have been probably a short amount of news for the span of those 5 days I'd be covering. So I've decided I'm going to do Saturday this week and then Friday, so it'll be a nice, solid, easy, relaxing 6 days of news. Let me tell you, there's a huge topic that I have to go right into, and it's a big one. It involves the U.S. Department of Justice. How often does that happen involving technology and entertainment? Actually, more often than you think, but this is probably one of the biggest ones I think I'll have ever covered for The Fresh Wire. U.S. Department of Justice filing a case against Apple for violating antitrust laws. So, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know how much I cover involving Apple trying to keep up their monopoly involving a lot of things that they do, including the famous beeper case, where a company finally tries to get iMessage working in some legitimate capacity that is tough to look at in an unofficial way that actually looked pretty legit. And then Apple completely tore that down, saying privacy and security concerns, and it eventually went through. It got the attention of even a U.S. senator. I forgot which one. It might have been Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. And now the Department of Justice finally stepping in, saying this is what they allege. Apple blocks, quote, super apps. It suppresses mobile cloud streaming services. It blocks cross-platform messaging apps. It limits third-party digital wallets and even limits how well third-party smartwatches work on its platforms. So since then, a lot of information has come out about it, and it's actually pretty insane. The U.S. lawsuit alleging Apple CarPlay is anti-competitive. Experts say this actually stronger than you could have possibly imagined for this sort of blockbuster antitrust case, and this is a huge deal. I don't know what's going to come out of it. Of course, Apple is going to fight it to its fullest extent. Pretty impressive that its coverage of what happened with Beeper probably helped kickstart this. This is the third time that the Department of Justice has sued Apple for antitrust violations in the past 14 years. So this is a pretty big deal, and this could very well reshape the smartphone in general, because there's been a huge monopoly in some capacities for Apple. Now, of course, it is perfectly legal to go to and become a monopoly, unfortunately. But that's my take. The official legal take is you can become a monopoly as long as you're not doing anti-competitive tactics. Like, for example, Google, if it has their massive Google search and they have the massively popular Android smartphone. But if you were not allowed to change your search engine beyond Google's own, that is an anti-competitive tactic, as far as I know. But that's not the case. You can change your search engine in a lot of different ways. You can change your browser app. Apple, outside of the EU, as far as I know, you can't change your default browser app. And even if you could, third-party browsers are deeply restricted in their capability and their technology they're able to use. And, of course, there's a whole problem and a half for third parties that want to do something with the iPhone or with iOS, and if Apple says no, then you can't. Google is not even that bad, because Android, because of its openness and its flexibility and the amount of devices you can get running Android on it, that's how Fortnite is still a thing on anything outside of Samsung Galaxy phones. The Galaxy Store has Fortnite, or the Epic Games app, and it works fine. It opens, but iPhone has not had Fortnite out for all this time because Apple... Epic Games tried to get around it, and then that became a whole lawsuit, and both companies, in my opinion, lost. But As a result of the EU, Fortnite's coming back in the EU because of the removal restriction of a third-party app store. And now I guess it's time for the Department of Justice to step in and do something of their own. So I don't know. This is a huge case. It will very certainly have a widespread impact. Whatever the result is, if what Apple's doing is okay or if it's not okay and they have to completely restructure a lot of things. Will iMessage become fully compatible with Android smartphones? We don't know. Will third-party app stores become available to acquire in the US on iPhones? Maybe. Will all of this come to nothing? Possibly. Some details have already come out, including that apparently at one point Apple tried for 3 years to get Apple Watches working with Android, because infamously Apple Watches, I think from day one, have no support for anything except iPhones, newer iPhones that are able to support the Apple Watches. No Android support whatsoever. And for a while, this looked anti-competitive inherently because Android watches, smartwatches for quite a bit, including Galaxy ones, I think. I might be wrong on this. But they were able to support iOS to a degree. It's just the Bluetooth connection. Now, as far as I know, they don't anymore. At least my watch, I think, has no iOS support. And other Android, the Wear OS watches, I think the Pixel Watch, I don't think that supports iOS, but I could be wrong. Of course, always do your own research when you want to, explain things further on your own terms with your friends and whatnot, hopefully. But this is obviously a huge deal. I don't know how this will play out. It could very well take years. If something major comes out of this is definitely going to become a Freshwire first topic, because this is groundbreaking. This could very well impact not just the US, but maybe even the world. Apple is one of the biggest companies in the world, and whatever comes out of this is going to be history in the making. It will very likely impact everyone, including especially people that are not on Android phones, because I don't see the Department of Justice saying, hey, no more iMessage, but rather let Android users use iMessage. Apple tried to get around this in recent months by saying, RCS, which is kind of like the successor to SMS texting that's from the 90s, they just want to integrate support for that. So when you're talking with an Android user, it's not going to be, completely unencrypted, no typing indicators, no read receipts, no extra features, and it's completely unsafe, it's insecure. But, they're going to add RCS support whenever that happens, and hopefully not just in the EU, where they were kind of enforced to do that. If it's just in the EU, genuinely, I would be fully in support of whatever the Department of Justice does, because that would be insane beyond all doubt. But, of course, very early, very, very early, it's very recent days. I probably wouldn't have had a full understanding of it if I did this podcast yesterday, so there is that. But, I don't know. I really don't know. This could change everything. And it's pretty impressive if the U.S. government is now finally putting out there as, green bubbles are uncool. I don't know. But this definitely, Apple with their fiery response, like I said, they're going to, put every penny they've got into protecting themselves, even if it makes them look worse, in my opinion. And for comparison, when the government and Microsoft had an antitrust situation between each other, that took over 3 years. And another 4 years for dissatisfied state attorney generals to run through the appeals courts. So this I think will have, I don't know, I think this could have even more of an impact compared to whatever happened with Microsoft in recent years, because this will impact smartphones. You either have an iPhone or an Android device. That is extremely likely. That's probably 99.9% of people in the U.S. So whatever comes out of this, it's not like Microsoft. It's like, okay, well, if you have a MacBook or if you have something that runs Linux or Ubuntu, no, this is everyone. Whatever comes out of this is going to change everything. Whatever happens from there is, I have no idea. Let's go to a little bit of good news, where it involves Nintendo. It's a very rare thing, but it's not Nintendo doing something good. That's very rare itself, but rather something that they're doing that's bad. In upcoming days, Wii U and Nintendo 3DS online services are going to be shutting down officially. Now, of course, there's other services like Pretendo that are trying to resurrect some capacity of online servers so that they still function unofficially, but a lot of Super Mario Maker levels are going to literally cease to exist. So there was a big push on getting these Super Mario Maker levels, every single one of them, successfully beat. It was called Team 0%, and I'm saying was because it succeeded this morning. The group trying to beat every single uploaded Wii U Super Mario Maker level for the service go dark on April 8th has succeeded. Now, for context, I think it's been a while since you were even able to upload levels to Super Mario Maker, officially making it a beatable game. And it happened sometime last week, mainly because Radar wrote, the creator of the level that Team 0% thought was going to be the final level to beat, Trimming the Herbs. Well, the creator revealed he'd fake proving a human could beat it. It was actually TAS, or Tool Assisted Speedrun, which is disappointing, but that as a result, that no longer makes it a level that is necessary to beat. If it was exclusively done with a TAS and is not actually beatable by a person, then I guess as far as I know, they don't count that. So now, to be fair, Team 0% says despite that, some will, quote, keep grinding it for eternal glory until the service ends. But officially, any level that a human being can beat has been beaten. Good job, Team 0%. I'm actually impressed because there's a lot of levels on Super Mario Maker. And now, safe to say, every single level that a human can beat has been defeated. Good job. I wish Nintendo would recognize that, but that would recognize their own mistakes and problems. So they will not, but just know, I'm proud of y'all. Moving into a little bit of social media. If you don't know, social media, wants to keep you on social media, unless you're x/twitter.com. But speaking of that platform, every now and then when there's like a lot of NBA games or sports games, you can usually, to a degree, see live scores, or at least real time, or at least scores where if you refresh it, it's still as up to date as they want it to be. Well, Meta is now testing live scores on Threads, their hopeful competitor to x/twitter.com that was a massive success for about a month or two, fell off dramatically, and now kind of just exists as people slowly move away from x/twitter.com, because it kind of felt like very few actually moved away from it, or at least if they did, it was for a little bit, and then people went all in on Threads for like I said, a few weeks, and then disappeared from that platform too. So it's still completely unknown what they're going to do, what's going to happen with Threads, or if any competitor will actually exist, or if Elon Musk decides to sell x/twitter.com to Saudi Arabia. Whatever the case, live scores are now on Threads, starting with NBA games, something called NBA Threads, where you can see the live scores. You can select a team on Threads using this, I guess, indicator of NBA Threads, and you'll see scores for live and recent games, and times for ones starting soon. Pretty impressive stuff. Hope it works great, and hope they can spread it out to other games, like NFL, when that happens in the fall. A little bit more on Threads. They have finally opened up, more so, their Fediverse beta. So now you can share your posts on other platforms that utilize the sort of decentralized platform that Threads is trying to utilize. Big one, as an example, being Mastodon. So in a post on Thursday, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announcing toggling on the feature will let you cross posts and view likes from other federated platforms like Mastodon. So it looks like it will be an opt-in feature. I'll definitely check that out. I barely use Threads, admittedly, but I still have the app installed, so at least I'm at that point. Support for Fediverse integration with Threads has been negotiated and talked about for quite a while, and even with this beta, there are some limitations. For example, the beta does not let users view replies or follows from the Fediverse, and Meta cannot promise that when you delete a federated post on Threads, it will also be deleted on other platforms it was shared on. Keep in mind, when it's decentralized, utilizing this ActivityPub integration that Threads started to test last year, you can't really control what's going to happen on other servers. It's decentralized. There's not really a main big server. That's the whole point, except for Threads, it seems. But they're now, it's their own server in this decentralized group of servers. Now, Threads is one of them. Then Mastodon, I think, does have their own official one, but if you want to join one, that's the whole point of this integration. No one company controls all the servers. Could it be a problem that one as big as Threads is now joining this Fediverse, this whole decentralized program as big as Threads? Well, that's to be seen, especially because Threads got significantly less popular, the months following its launch. But it's unknown. We'll have to see. If you want to activate it yourself, you can go to your Threads account settings and select Fediverse sharing beta, then follow the instructions. In other news, recently they've even, done a little bit more. Like when I open it in the search and the Explore tab, now I even get to see trending topics, something that early on people actually didn't want added to Threads. I remember it was a big thing to not have trending topics because it could push specific topics that maybe shouldn't be talked about that are. In my opinion, I think it's almost a necessity for a successful social media platform. I don't really use Facebook, but x/Twitter.com, that's one of their big things. You can see what's trending, what's popular, whether locally or across the platform. It was inevitable that Threads was going to add it, especially because like Instagram doesn't have it. Like photo-focused ones don't really have it. TikTok actually does to a degree. I don't know how reliable it is because every time I open the search in TikTok, it's these weird search trends that I have no idea what they're all about. So, crazy. Speaking of crazy, the term AI PCs. You might think of AI PC and you're like, what? A PC? How? That doesn't make any sense. And if I tell you Microsoft, maybe you'll understand a little bit better. But if not, well, Microsoft in recent months called this year as, quote, Year of the AI PC, and they're gearing up for it in whatever way they can, introducing new Surface devices, Surface being the brand name that Microsoft uses for their in-house products. The Surface Duo, which was a smartphone that folded in half but was two screens that has since, I guess, become a big failure. And, of course, their actual laptops. Their Surface tablets, Surface Pro and Surface Laptop, they've been actually very successful and are the framework of a great overall Windows laptop or machine. And they've just announced the Surface Pro 10 and Surface Laptop 6 featuring Intel's latest processors, Microsoft's new Copilot key, and even a neural processing unit to improve upon AI-powered features in Windows 11. Microsoft calling them, quote, the first Surface AI PCs built exclusively for business, unquote. Now, here's what this big problem is, that you probably won't be able to get one. They're not being sold to consumers. They're being sold for businesses. Now, these aren't radical changes. They have not been redesigned on the outside, so they still look largely similar to previous iterations. The Surface Laptop 6 has an additional USB Type-C Thunderbolt 4 port, which is great for productivity and future-proofing. But they do look very similar and will start being sold to commercial customers April 9th. So very capable stuff, but as Microsoft said themselves, while they're very capable, they will not be for consumers, at least not these versions. Microsoft saying that both these devices are, quote, most easily serviceable Surface devices ever, unquote, which is pretty nice. Now, Microsoft will sell both of these exclusively to businesses through its own channels and authorized resellers. And if you could, if you want to, apparently, technically just buy them from Microsoft's business store online or through resellers, though, quote, these products are built exclusively for business. That doesn't mean that we are not building products for consumers going forward. We remain committed to that, but we're announcing these that are specifically built for commercial, unquote. That's an official from Microsoft. So the expectation is at a May 20th event hosted by Microsoft, that's probably where they'll announce the official Surface Pro 10 and Surface Laptop 6. What is likely the case here is Microsoft is not ready to talk about all of the crazy new AI features they're hyping up as they're coming to Windows 11 or whatever Windows is next. Microsoft plans to hold this special Windows and Surface AI event on May 20th, where Microsoft CEO will share the company's, quote, AI vision for both software and hardware. So I'm certain these are more for business, so you probably don't want a whole lot of AI corrupting into your business to begin with. Not now, not later, maybe not ever. So they're introducing these as, minor revisions, at least from the outside. When they eventually do open up to the consumers, probably something that's going to look very similar, if not nearly identical, then they can hype up all the crazy new software. But now we have the expectation for the hardware. And keep in mind, the Surface Pro 10 starts at $1,200, quite a bit of money, but then you compare to the $1,100 MacBook Air with the M3 chip, so it's actually not that far off. Just have to be careful what specs you get. And Surface Laptop 6, same price, $1,200. So whatever happens out of that, I will probably not be interested, only because I think my current laptop is more than enough. 2020 Razer Blade with a beautiful, beautiful OLED display. Until they can make something like that for less than the price I paid, which is 3 digits, I'll say that, then we'll see. What we won't be seeing going into video gaming is this odd fork or different iteration of a Nintendo Switch emulator that was kind of legally erased from the face of the earth. Yuzu. Well, this fork of it, which means it's an iteration based off of it but slightly changed, is called Suyu. If it's not obvious what that's supposed to mean, well, GitLab, which hosted this version of Yuzu, now called Suyu, confirmed it removed it, saying it's following its DMCA takedown policy. Keeping in mind, any version of this emulator kind of is illegal forever now. So if you try to make a fork from it, that means you're making a fork off of something that when it existed was illegal and is now illegal, at least to some degree. The developers behind this fork also had their accounts disabled. Officially, a spokesperson said GitLab received a DMCA takedown notice from a representative of the rights holder and followed our standard process. That was a quote said by a spokesperson, which probably means a rights holder probably is Nintendo. However, it is a little bit of a weird situation that GitLab would not say, because it wasn't actually, the rights to Yuzu's code was not actually won or given to Nintendo in the settlement. It was just anything involving it was shut down permanently. All of the code was erased, and the developers had to pay up like more than $2 million. So it's completely unknown who actually did it. Reportedly, in the email that was sent, received by a Suyu contributor, whoever sent the takedown request is trying to piggyback on how Yuzu allegedly violated DMCA 1201 by circumventing Nintendo's technical protection measures, and may also subtly threatening GitLab with unlawful trafficking while they're at it. So Suyu has claimed it does not include the same circumvention measures as Yuzu. Yeah, so because GitLab just, wants to cover their butt, as any company would, of course, they don't have to host anything it doesn't want to host. So why push back on an invalid request? I think as far as I've already read, the code has already been cloned over to a different repository, and the leader of the developing behind Suyu said, quote, "I'm most certainly going to host a copy of the code," unquote. So if it keeps building up, because I think they just recently released one of their first builds for Mac OS, I think. I don't know about Windows. I'll definitely check it out, though, even though I think to a degree it's still, controversial. But if they're saying they don't use the same circumvention measures, then I'd be very surprised I'm not going to jinx it. You can assume what I was going to say, but I'm not going to jinx it, because I like seeing emulators exist and thrive, not for the sake of profiting, of course, because that's illegal, but as far as I know, but it's, game preservation. That's the most critical thing. When these games shut down online services for Wii U and 3DS, it's going to be a huge situation right there, and they already shut down the eShop, and also all of a sudden all these games that used to be purchasable have disappeared. It's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, back to tech. It involves Google and whatever craziness shenanigans that they get into nowadays. They decided, you know what, I think we're lagging a bit behind Apple in something pretty important: satellite messaging. And the latest developer preview for Android 15, their next version, has changes that allow satellite messaging to officially come on over. Of course, there's also several improvements, but now this is sort of making it official. A test notification by the Android developer phone OS says auto connected to satellite and saying you can now send or receive messages without a mobile or Wi-Fi network. So it actually seems to be a little bit more capable than iOS and how iPhones do it, where you have to specifically point yourself, and then while you've got the signal while you can send over a 911 message. In this case, you could probably send or receive messages like normal through a satellite, and it's just going to auto connect you, I guess, if you have no other signal at all. Like you're in the Himalayan mountains and then you got not even 2G. You can point it to a satellite and then it could work. Of course, the question is, what kind of satellites will you be able to connect to? And of course, the hardware itself has to have at least some varying level of support. I think T-Mobile and Starlink, which is SpaceX, have some sort of partnership where I think a regular smartphone, I have mentioned it in a previous episode, where they're able to connect a normal flagship Samsung Galaxy S phone, like I think the S23 was, and they were able to connect to a satellite just with regular mobile data. So now it is going to make it official. First official confirmation, Android 15 will come with satellite messaging. Google's press release saying that the new preview includes support for, quote, preloaded RCS applications to use satellite connectivity for sending and receive messages, unquote. So even the new standard of RCS, I say new, but it's been around since the 2000s, but it's new relatively to SMS. Now, it's actually one-upping iPhone even more by saying, hey, you can actually send RCS messages over satellite, which is pretty impressive. Can't wait for that. Hopefully my phone, whenever that comes around in the coming months, gets to my phone as soon as possible. As a Samsung Galaxy S owner myself, I'm still waiting for that One UI 6.1 update that is very hyped up and should have some AI capability that I'm curious to check out, but I don't have like the latest and greatest model, so I don't know how great it's going to be for me. But something that I am a little perplexed about, but am going to stay optimistic because of some of the names behind it, is a movie involving The Sims. Yeah, a Sims movie. Some big names are attached to it, including a production company run by Margot Robbie, lucky chap, and another person attached to the name to the Sims is the person that directed season 1 of Loki. So mind-bending kind of show, of course. It's Loki. I mean, come on. And now dealing with something like The Sims is going to be a huge ordeal. Electronic Arts, or EA, which publishes the game, will be involved in a creative and producing capacity. So an EA-associated movie, I don't know if it's live action. I think it's a live action film, but I actually don't think they confirm it. Obviously it's The Sims. Huge thing. Lucky chap being associated to it is even crazier because of the billion-dollar success with Barbie, and I guess they were behind that to a degree. And this is a big deal. This is going to be. I don't know what's going to come out of this. But if they were able to have such a massive success with Barbie, and now they're doing The Sims, then I'll just have to wait and see, because I heard good things about Barbie, and if there's similar people involved or quality people involved, like the person that handled season 1 of Loki, then go for it. I'm very excited for it. Now, a little bit sticking with gaming for just a little bit. There was this big release that happened, and it actually kind of upset me a little bit because this was a game I grew up playing. Star Wars Battlefront, recently released. Asper, specifically, recently published a new classic collection of the first 2 Star Wars Battlefront games. The big ones, the ones that were on consoles. Not the new ones, the classic ones. Hence, classic collection. And it did not give a first impression, I'll say that. Players were met with a myriad of bugs and limited servers for each platform. I saw one screenshot that said, I think for the original Battlefront, they only had 3 64-player servers up, and at its around its launch, it had like about 1,000 players trying to play. And, one cool thing about this is, it's a new version, so it should have new online capability without needing to mod the old version that you could easily do. And also keep in mind, as far as I know, Star Wars Battlefront 2, you could literally purchase and download the original version on Steam right now. I have it. I don't remember how I got it, but I do have it. I think it's because I did purchase it for a few dollars a long time ago. They removed it when the new Battlefront game started coming out. And then I guess at a certain point, it might have been Disney that thought, wait a second, we could make money by having people go back to the classic. Why remove it? And that's exactly what happened. And it's still a beloved game to this day. Obviously, it's aging a little bit. It's Battlefront 2 specifically is 19 years old or so. So, very, very classic game. It's in the name, classic, for the iteration of it. And now that they're releasing this version, it's been a bit of a disaster. Collection currently sitting on a, quote, overwhelmingly negative review average on Steam. That's bad. I think you can't get worse than that. That's like the equivalent of 1 out of 10 if you search the game up on Google. So Asper acknowledged the poor launch state soon after the collection was released, stating it had, quote, experienced critical errors and would work to address the many issues. And in recent days, it looks like they're making good on that promise, releasing the first major patch for Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. It aims to address a multitude of issues, including multiplayer audio and visuals. To be fair, issues that should have not been a problem on day one, or even in early access, really. It's rough. And yeah, I mean, obviously, devastating, very disappointing release. If you mainly play on PC, this is just a very disappointing release in general. And for people that play on modern PlayStation, Xbox, and even the Nintendo Switch, this should have been an opportunity to bring people back into something as classic as Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 were in the early to mid-2000s, and they just completely fell flat on its face in the worst possible way, because I really, like I said, I really liked playing this game when I was younger. Battlefront 2 or the Battlefront on PSP were fun. Countless hours put into those games, just enjoying the madness of Star Wars in such a large landscape, surrounded by other players, whether offline or online. This is very disappointing, and I think it's also like a huge game. It's like 60, 70 gigabytes or something. I don't know about that big, but keeping in mind, Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 were released on PlayStation 2 and Xbox when the largest game you could have was like 7.5 gigabytes or 7 gigabytes or something each. So for it to be like 50, I think it was like around 50 maybe. You could say uncompressed audio all you want, but that's just crazy because I think graphics didn't even look that much better. I don't know about like AI upscaled, but it's just obviously it almost looks like a cash grab, which would be horrible. But then again, that was kind of like what the Grand Theft Auto trilogy was not too long ago. It was kind of like a mobile game. Then it became a mobile game, and somehow the mobile version actually was better. I think, at least more efficient and understandable. But it was like very ugly graphics that just did not look correct. AI upscaling here and there, and it was. Speaking of a mess, or maybe possibly not a mess, but there could be, and I mentioned a little bit of this in last week's episode, but it looks like rumors are starting to build up, not really the Nintendo Switch 2 or Switch Attach or whatever it ends up being called, but the PlayStation 5 Pro, which could be the most powerful console yet. Keeping in mind, it has been a few years since the PlayStation 5 launched. Let's compare back to the previous generation where this sort of mid-gen upgrade became a thing, really, at least commonly. 2013, Sony released the PlayStation 4. And in 2016, they released the PlayStation 4 Pro. Now, take a look at here, 2020, PS5 released, and now it's 2024. Already been a longer time between the PS4 and PS4 Pro, and it hasn't been as necessary as it was with the PS4, as people were starting to get 4K displays, only to find out the PS4 can struggle to hit 1080p, but that hasn't really been much of a problem this time, except for something that I think should be false advertising, where the PS5 on its box says 8K support, and still doesn't. But that's a different story, possibly. But some pretty legitimate-looking specs are starting to be leaked involving the PlayStation 5 Pro, and they are pretty impressive. For example, it looks like it supports, this is to be confirmed, it's not entirely confirmed or anything, But it looks like the GPU could be almost twice as capable, and the teraflop capability, which was a crazy number when the PS4 and Xbox One released, and it was like 1.3 teraflops to 1.8 teraflops, and then it happened again. The Xbox Series X was 12 teraflops, and the PS5 is like 9 point something, 10 point something, or 10.23, and the PlayStation 5 Pro looks to be 33.5 teraflops, which is a pretty huge upgrade, objectively. More memory would be available for games, although not a groundbreaking amount. Kind of like the PS4 Pro, where it had the same amount. I think the RAM was slightly faster, and it included a gigabyte of regular, I think, laptop grade or maybe normal computer grade RAM for multitasking, so that the game in the background, I guess, wouldn't be impacted if you, let's say, opened Netflix, which would use that 1 gigabyte. But otherwise, very minimal. The CPU looks to be somewhat of an upgrade, but it looks to be the same architecture, which I can kind of see why. However, it looks like developers will be able to run it at a higher clock speed compared to the original PS4 Pro. The PlayStation 4 Pro, in comparison, gained a 33% increase in CPU power and no impact to GPU performance. So it looks like what's probably happening is Sony doesn't want to go all out with a new revision of the CPU for this Pro model while still making normal PlayStation 5s, and seems to be restricted on the fact that it is what's called a 6 nanometer process, while PCs and even smartphones are starting to go to 5, 4, I think 3 nanometers. They're becoming more efficient. They're smaller, which allows them to have more of a capability in day-to-day tasks. So could be a little bit of a disappointment, but a newer GPU, which is going to be a big deal, allegedly 2 to 4 times faster ray tracing than PlayStation 5, which could be a big limiting factor in upcoming years. Ray tracing looks to be taking over everything. And also some capability of machine learning, meaning a DLSS-style upscaler could be coming to it as well. DLSS being deep learning super sampling, so it makes games look nicer at lower resolutions. Well, it looks like something called PlayStation Spectral Resolution could be doing something similar. Sony's saying that this has a small memory footprint and about a quarter of a gigabyte, and it could even be backported to any existing PlayStation game, which would be very, very, very impressive. So, I don't know. Rumors, from what I've seen, suggest this could release later this year. As someone that pre-ordered a PS5 and has been using it nearly every day since, I don't know if I'm the kind of person that would want to buy this, especially when I have a PlayStation 5. It's not like when the PS4 Pro released, and that was actually around the time I got into the ecosystem. I didn't have a PS4 before the Pro model release, and that's when I got one. Fantastic machine. But I don't know. This is looking very interesting. Higher frame rates, enhanced image quality, and improved ray tracing capability could be what separates it from the standard model. But if those are the big things, then it could be even more of a niche than the PS4 Pro was, where in 2016, its big thing was 4K capability and maybe higher frame rates, and maybe even some slightly lower load times, unless you put an SSD in which case it was much more capable, which is what I did at some point. But if it's mainly just like a slightly faster PC equivalent, then I don't know. But if it's going to be, theoretically, about 3 times, if not a little more than 3 times more capable than the PlayStation 5, and 2.5 times, I guess, as capable as the Xbox Series X, then this could reshape the second half of the generation. I think this would be larger of a leap than, or maybe even close to the similar leap that the PS4 Pro did, because that was like a 1.8 teraflops, and I think it went to 4.2, something like that. Could be closer to the jump that the Xbox One X had, where that went from around 1.3 teraflops to I think that was 6. They just had to one-up Sony, even though it did take an entire extra year to release that. And again, I had the One X as well. I did not have an Xbox One prior. So from experience, you can only do so much when you're trying to push something that built that generation. So what will come out of it? No idea. But again, if something big happens or if something's ever announced, I'm definitely going to have it in whatever episode is associated. And that's it for the main meat and potatoes of the podcast. Appreciate everyone, but I'm always going to jump into what I've been doing before as futurology. But since last week, I wanted to change it up a bit because so much AI stuff has been happening that I wanted to at least temporarily turn into more of an AI coverage situation. It's just been the talk of the town for quite a while now. And just two small things. I'm going to start with WhatsApp, a messaging platform maybe even you use, especially if you are an Android user. And a big push of Meta AI looks to be making into its most prominent section yet, the search bar. Instead of opening a Meta AI conversation, users would be able to start typing in the search bar to get answers from the chat bot. WA Beta Info spotted the feature in a new Android WhatsApp beta update that I wish I could get naturally through the Google Play Store, but I'm not able to because their beta program must be the fit of 100 users, and it's just conveniently one of them decided to leak out these beta updates. So I'm excited for that. I'm a big WhatsApp user, especially during college when a lot of my friends had iPhones, and there was no way I was going to text them through lowly, cute little SMS. And I didn't use it before I went to college because during my time, at least through part of high school, I remember something called Hangouts that Google made, and it was genuinely an amazing platform, unlike anything else. I even had Sprint back then, obviously not anymore, they've shut down. But they were, I think, the only carrier that even had like the SMS integration with Hangouts, and it was amazing. I really wish that sort of platform continued to exist, but sometimes you forget that Google is just Google, and they're going to Google whenever they can for worse and maybe better. But sometimes you gotta wonder why they do their decisions, and then even they are like, wow, we messed up big time. Something that's not being a big mess up is the last topic of today's episode, NVIDIA. They've been going all in on AI more so than anything imaginable, and I think they became one of the most profitable, most successful companies in the United States now, all thanks to the beauty of their CUDA cores in the GPUs and the beauty that is AI. So they showed off recent tech demos at the Game Developer Conference, GDC, involving AI turning game characters into chatbots. Now, there's actually been some controversy. Some games actually have been releasing to a degree that kind of allows you to communicate with them like they're like a chatbot rather than just a regular NPC that only says a few lines and that's that. They've been very limited examples, to be fair. Mainly, they're the focus of the title, and it's usually a smaller title. But NVIDIA is trying to bring it out into the real world. The company releasing a clip of Covert Protocol, a playable tech demo that showcases how its AI tools can allow NPCs to respond in unique ways to player interactions and generating new responses that fit the live gameplay. So you've got these hyper-realistic models, and now you've got AI-sounding characters that are able to speak AI, that are able to be AI, feel AI, everything. I'm not sure how much of a fan I am. The source code of it is set to be released, quote, in the near future to encourage other developers to adopt NVIDIA's digital human tech. What they call the Avatar Cloud Engine, ACE, by the way. I don't know what will happen from it. They also showcased something called Audio to Face, which was showcased in a clip of the upcoming MMO, Massive Multiplayer Online, World of Jade Dynasty, demonstrating a character lip-syncing to both English and Mandarin Chinese speech. That's pretty cool. It'll make it easier to create games in multiple languages without manually reanimating characters. That is a sort of use case that I can definitely see being pushed further and being, I hope, generally accepted. Being able to make a game into multiple languages without the massive process of doing so manually, as long as it doesn't, impact people's jobs or whatnot. I fear that it is something that could happen, but I hope not, and that's all I can do. At least without my wallet stepping into the picture. But that'll be it for me this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Make sure to check up on previous episodes to see my takes on earlier topics. You never know. You want to maybe relive an oldie but goldie. You can always do that, whether it's on wherever you listen to your podcasts or on thefreshwire.com, where every episode has their summary and a page to it every time I publish this episode. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in the next few minutes after I end this episode here and publish it for the world to listen. So that'll be it for me today. Thank you one last time. Really appreciate it. Hope you're all doing well for the upcoming days. And I'll catch you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a gosh darn good one. Peace.